The Duke basketball winning ways continue. Another win in ACC play, this time on the road at Notre Dame. The Blue Devils survive. They now have their second conference win of the season. Let's talk about that and a whole lot more coming up on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. It is so great to have you here with us on this Tuesday, January 9th, 2024. Excited to talk about everything going on in the life of Duke athletics. Duke men's basketball, an 8-point victory over Notre Dame this weekend. Duke now 11-3 on the year, 2-1 in ACC play. And we're going to talk about all of that with our good pal Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast, who will join us on today's show. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. That means so much to us when you take the time to do that. Also, watch the show daily on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button to our YouTube channel. Like this video. Share it with your friends as we continue to grow this Locked On Blue Devils community. Your support means so much to us. Follow us on X at LO_Blue Devils and follow me there as well at _JJ_Jackson_. So without further ado, let's bring them on in. It's my good friend Josh Cox, who's back with us once again. And man, it was a little bit closer than we would have liked, but Duke basketball walks away with a win over Notre Dame this past weekend.
Yeah, certainly. I'm sure that everyone, including the people inside the program, wish it was a 25-point runaway victory there, but to get a win on the road in the ACC, JJ, those aren't easy. They never come easy. It doesn't matter what the records are. It doesn't matter, what the Vegas odds are. All those things in ACC road games kind of get thrown out the window, especially when you're Duke, man. There is a Duke effect. If you took a look in the stands during that game, there was a whole lot of royal blue, and so there's definitely a Duke effect there when you go on the road. And as someone who follows the program, if you get out of a ACC road game with a 1-point victory, that's a victory. So,
yeah, you'll take it. It's so hard to win in this league, and so the fact that Duke was able to do that is outstanding. A couple of players led the way for the Blue Devils. Some struggled a little bit, so we'll be able to break it all down. And then a quick turnaround. Duke is back on the road yet again. They're taking on Pitt for the first time this season, so a big test coming up a little bit later for Duke, but let's continue to talk about this Notre Dame game on the road. Duke takes on a Fighting Irish team that's not very good. 6-8 coming into the contest. They had lost a couple of kind of bad games in the non-conference. Couldn't score against NC State. Really haven't been able to score all season long. Duke, yet again, on the defensive end of the floor, holds their opponent below their season average. Notre Dame averages 63 points per game. They scored 59 against the Blue Devils. And the defense getting the job done once again.
Yeah, I mean, and by the way, on that note, every opponent this season, Duke has held under their scoring average. So every single opponent so far. So that's a key there on the defensive side of the ball, which, I mean, I believe all of us, including you and I, would have said, there's some question marks there, especially on the rim protection. Well, there still may be some question marks on the rim protection, but at the bottom line is you're trying to stop people from scoring, and Duke is holding every single opponent so far underneath their scoring average. So kudos to, I think Jay Lucas really takes the helm a lot on that defensive scheme side, and so kudos to him and the rest of the coaching staff.
We're going to get into the offensive performances of the likes of Mark Mitchell, Jeremy Roach, once again, some star players for the Duke basketball team. Good to see Mark Mitchell get back going, but let's talk a little bit more about what we saw from Duke on the defensive end and a game in which the offensive shots were a little bit hard to find and to fall for the Duke basketball team. You got to continue to pride yourself on the defensive end of the floor. Duke knew coming into the game that, look, this team's not very good. They don't shoot the ball from the outside very well. Marcus Burton is their top player. and he was one of the most inefficient players out there on the floor. So Duke did a really good job with the scouting report as well on this.
Yeah, and you saw Duke really help off on penetration quite a bit. Jeremy Roach ended up with 4 steals, and I believe 3 of them were, where he was in help defense and just kind of committed to going for the steal there on penetration. And so, yeah, you're exactly right. This defense did its job. Really, Shrewsbury, coach's son, hit a couple of threes. But, I mean, other than that, man, you're right. They're struggling. Burton is very inefficient. I think he was, 7 for 20 or 7 for 21, I believe, from the field.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I mean, they were not good by any stretch of the imagination, and neither was Duke. Like, let's be honest. I mean, if you isolate Duke's performance, nobody would be like, oh yeah, that's the way we want to shoot, and that's the way we want this game to go. But you have to put it in context of on the road in South Bend, and they were ugly in the game up a little bit, and Duke's defense took that challenge and, like we said, held them underneath their scoring average and came out with the victory.
This is a game after Duke shot 100% in the last half of basketball that they had played, right? That was the second half of the game prior. Duke finishes 21 of 59 from the floor shooting the basketball. But again, the defensive ability to take a good player on the opposite team for this Duke team and take them out of the game has been something that you've got to be really pleased with. We talked about it with the Hofstra guard a little bit earlier this season, who was one of their top scorers and playmakers there. And then Marcus Burton, again, on Saturday. You take a look at the KenPom offensive ratings for this game. 100 is average across the board. He walks away with an 83. So Duke did a really remarkable job. And those numbers, again, to your point, 7 of 21 from the floor, 1 of 4 from three-point range. And Notre Dame, as a team, shot just 39%, and they were 5 of 19, about 25%. And if it wasn't for the coach's son, Shrewsbury, who was shooting better than his average this season, the margin would have been a little bit wider.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. So all that, listen, what all that adds up to, JJ, an ugly road win in the ACC. That's what that all adds up to. And, we've said this numerous times over the lifespan of us having conversations. We'll take an ugly win any day over a pretty loss, right? I'll take an ugly win over, man, Duke played really well, but Notre Dame just played better. Like, no, okay, that's fine. I'll take the win. Give me the ugly win. Take the ugly win every single time.
That's what we're looking for. We'll take them, count these wins, stack them up. This Duke basketball team playing some good basketball right now, and we hope that continues a little bit later. What about the offensive end of the floor? A couple of players really set the tone offensively for Duke. Mark Mitchell and Jeremy Roach, namely, were the dynamic duo. Let's talk a little bit more about their performances after we take our first time out here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. It's time for the NFL playoffs. The NFL regular season has wrapped up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 straight to you in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use and so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. You can find the bets in the new Explore tab, making a parlay into Parlay Hub, and so much more. So go ahead and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet today. Once again, that is FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL and the Locked On Podcast Network. We'll move it forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. I'm alongside my pal Josh Cox. Got to talk a little bit about the offense for this Duke basketball team. Earlier in the week, Mark Mitchell had a career-high 21 points against Syracuse. He topped that number again, and Mark Mitchell has a new career high with 23 against Notre Dame this past weekend. It was the first half against Syracuse where he scored 18 of 21. But this past Saturday, over the weekend, Mark Mitchell had 19 of his 23 points coming in the second half, including 14 straight to open up the half for the Duke Blue Devils. Wow, what a performance from Mark Mitchell. And I didn't even mention the outside shot.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, to set your career high 2 games in a row I mean, on points scored, kudos to Mark Mitchell. All the noise going on around him, all the things going on social media, he was feeling obviously that, subpar under 5% shooting from three. He was feeling all that pressure. These kids aren't, ignorant of those things. And for him to come out and score 23 and to grab 14 rebounds, it's his first time in double-digit rebounds, his first double-double. I mean, it was wild, and it just shows you the value of a player like Mark Mitchell when you have your star player, Kyle Filipowski, just didn't have it. He was 2 for 12 from the field. He just wasn't there, and was taken, out of this game. And so, I mean, to see Mark bounce back like that yet again, he's showing, why he's so valuable and so important to this team. And I'll give him credit. I did see the clip where your boy Jordan on this podcast called it, and so I'll give him credit. That Mark was going to break out of that slump. So,
yeah, he went 2 for 2, had good looks. The team was super excited. We all were when he made it, and that's the thing. He's getting these shots in practice, and he's knocking them down. We saw him shoot it above a 30% clip this past season as a freshman, so it's in there somewhere. It's just been a really bad start to the year. It has to average out a little bit at some point, and I thought that was the biggest point in this game in particular, is that Mark Mitchell wasn't necessarily forcing that outside shot. 8 of 12 from the floor, 2 of 2 from three-point range. Like 2 attempts, they didn't come until that second half when he's feeling really good. And, it was just really fun to see him knock those down.
Well, yeah, you saw him in the first half get that ball at the top of the key and take a couple dribbles in, shoot like right inside the free throw line. So he did. He was taking the game as it came to him. His confidence level is just getting better and better. And as a Duke fan, if you love these guys coming back, right, second season, but see a guy struggle the way he struggled and then to see him break out of it, I mean, you got to just be excited, for him personally. So, yeah, I thought that was really, really good for Mark. And then obviously it came at an opportune time for this team because they were definitely struggling. We could talk about, that a little bit, but they were struggling on offense for sure.
Yeah, we'll get to that here in just a little bit. Got to continue to give a little flowers out for what we saw in the good with Mark Mitchell. Second most minutes he's played all season long, 32 minutes out there on the floor. So stayed out of foul trouble. Duke needed it because there were other players on the offensive end who just didn't have it. And so Mark Mitchell was able to get that done. I mentioned a little bit earlier for folks out there, again, looking at the Ken Pomeroy offensive ratings for this game, which kind of judges the efficiency and impact that you're having. 100 is average. Marcus Burton, Notre Dame's top player, had a 83 offensive rating for this game. Mark Mitchell, 144. 144 was his offensive rating. Jeremy Roach had a 135, by far the two best players for Duke on the offensive end on Saturday.
Well, once again, here we are, JJ. We have Mark Mitchell getting the accolades. He got, by the way, the ACC absolutely overlooked him in Player of the Week this week. Should have won that award. But here we are giving the accolades to Mark Mitchell. But who's that second guy?
Jeremy Roach. Yep.
It's like every single week when we talk Duke basketball, it's like, yeah, there's a Jared McCain breakout, but there's also Jeremy Roach. Yeah, Filipowski had this. There's also Jeremy Roach. It seems like that is the constant. And so, yeah, Jeremy had another solid game. And may I say this? He also, I know he had 4 steals, which shows that he had a good defensive game. But I feel like he also kind of took that matchup with Burton on himself a little bit. And he was on him for pretty much that entire game. And so, I mean, listen, I can't express enough how important Jeremy Roach is to this team. Cannot express it.
Yeah, he's one of our absolute favorites. At times he does feel overlooked, and we shouldn't be doing that because he's the captain of this team. I know Twitter's giving him the playoff germ, mode that we're seeing over and over and over again from our boy Roach. 18 points on Saturday, 4 of 9 from the floor, 1 of 4 from 3, but had 6 rebounds. The 4 steals that you mentioned, 2 assists. And in 8 of the last 9 games, he scored at least 17 points. And the one game he didn't was the blowout over Queens, where Duke really didn't need him to help out that much. So what a tear he's on offensively. And you're right, we keep wanting to talk about, look what Filipowski did, or Jared McCain is amazing. But Jeremy Roach continues to deliver.
Yeah, he absolutely does. And I'm checking it right now to make sure, but I am pretty sure he is shooting 49% from three right now. And that would just be absolutely ridiculous. He's shooting 47%. Shooting 47% from three on the season right now. I mean, that's just between him and Jared, man. Those guys are approaching that 50% mark, which is wild. And so, I mean, we got to give him all the credit in the world. And then speaking of Jared McCain, he did come on there in the second half some, got his shot, finally, hit a couple of important shots for Duke down the stretch. Just he didn't have a great efficient game, but finds himself in double figures, and once again is important in the win.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about some of those offensive struggles, Jared McCain in particular, and a Kyle Filipowski discussion. Tyrese Proctor still trying to get his feet back under him on the offensive end of the floor, it appears, for the Duke basketball team. So we'll have those conversations and wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils after we take our final timeout here on the program. Locked On Blue Devils is brought to you by our friends over at Jase Medical. Jase Medical, of course, one of our favorites. I know that we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of real life, but can we talk just a moment about preparing for real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. It's crazy. Some might say that's a little scary as well. I want to let you know about the Jase case. This gives us a peace of mind, my family in particular, thankfully for our friends over at Jase Medical. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, skin infections, so much. I mean, this stuff can happen to any of us. So go ahead and visit jasemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. So go ahead and go to jasemedical.com and use offer code LOCKEDON for $20 off your order. Once again, that's jasemedical.com, offer code LOCKEDON for $20 off your order. Back on Locked On Blue Devils, JJ Jackson alongside my pal Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. Promote your show. Promote some of the work you got going on these days, Josh.
Yeah, Section 17 podcast. We're kind of in off-season mode right now, but we cover Duke football, and there's a lot going on, as there is in every football program. But now the off-season is interesting with all the portal movement and all those types of things. Obviously, new head coach Manny Diaz. So you can find us at DukeFootballTalk.com, at Duke FB Talk on social, and then on Facebook, Duke Football Talk as well. YouTube, all that good stuff, wherever you consume podcasts, as JJ would appreciate as well. The support, share it with a friend, subscribe, review, rate, 5-star, all that good stuff. But I also do some work in basketball with at Duke Report on X and cover some games there. JJ, I will actually be covering the UNC game at UNC. I found that out. So
amazing.
Yeah. So looking forward to that. But yeah, dabble a little bit in basketball, but honestly, true passion is football. But absolutely love basketball and have been following it, for my whole life. So
yeah, we love the Duke team in particular. The good, the bad, the ugly. We love it all with this squad. And so when we talk about Saturday's game, again, an 8-point win, 67-59 over Notre Dame. Duke is now 11-3 overall in the season, 2-1 in the ACC. To your point a little bit earlier, let's talk about some of the ugly things in a win rather than trying to talk about those following a loss. Duke, as a team, 35.6% shooting from the floor. They were 8 of 26. That's 31% from three-point range. Really just did not have a lot of offensive success shooting the basketball in this one.
Well, even worse, JJ, as Duke headed to halftime, they were 31% from the field, 21% from three-point line. And here's what I told guys on my group text and as I was watching the game, and somehow they headed to the locker room with a 2-point lead. I was absolutely mind blown by that. Like, everything was going against Duke. Couldn't put the ball in the ocean, and somehow Notre Dame had left the door open enough for Duke to have a 2-point lead. But yeah, you're right. The shots were not falling. Jared McCain's, it just didn't look right. Even though, like I said, shot's beautiful. I'm just saying, like, it wasn't in rhythm. It wasn't in a flow. Filipowski was just, inefficient, and then fouls, and then, it was not good. And Duke cannot have, especially a first half like that, against a team that's not Notre Dame. I'm not trying to make fun of Notre Dame in any way, but you have a half of basketball like that against a NC State, a Miami, especially a UNC, a Clemson, one of those, Wake Forest. I mean, you're gonna find yourself down 15 points at halftime, and then what are you gonna do? So it was definitely a struggle, JJ, especially in the first half.
Yeah, with this Duke team on the season, finding a way to knock down shots from the outside had been kind of the calling card. And so when that's not working, what do? Let's try and see if we can get Kyle Filipowski going on the inside. And Flip had a tough game, 2 of 12 from the floor for Kyle Filipowski. So what did you see from him on the offensive end in particular?
I'll say this. Sometimes I feel, first of all, the low post game, I get that Coach Shire wants him to get the ball on the block some. I actually agreed with whoever the commentator was for the game, and I forget who was calling the game. But, like, if Flip gets the ball on the post, it's a big guy, you got to turn and face him. Face up and be able to then use your dribble to get by him or shoot over. So he's 7 foot tall. I just feel like that needs to get adjusted a little bit. I feel like Flip is not a back to the basket kind of a guy. And Duke's trying to make him that. I would actually love to see Coach Shire, like, tell, and this is probably illegal, but, like, put it in his NIL contract that, like, if you get 10 assists in a game, you get X amount of bonus. Like, I would actually love to see Flip, like, focus on that. And so, like, I've probably said that before. So, like, I would actually love to see him see how many assists he can get in a game, because I feel like at that point, his offensive game would come to him. He would get more open looks. I feel like a little bit right now he's forcing it. He's getting the ball on the block because they're calling plays for him to get on the block. He gets it. And then, like, honestly, his low post game is like, it's like a 6 out of 10. It's not great. He really needs to be on the wing, or he needs to be facing up on the block. And so that's just my analysis from it. I do like how Duke is still coming and pinning down and bringing him up and getting him the ball at the top of the key. I like that. Once again, when he gets the ball at the top of the key, you know what he does? He immediately turns and faces up. So when he's facing up, I'm all for it. When he's back to the basket, to me, I'm not saying he never scores that way. I just don't believe it's his best. It's Kyle Filipowski at his best. So maybe some frustration there. And then, that leads to, getting down on yourself. And Kyle's admitted that he definitely has mind games that plays with him during the game some. And, he never broke out of it in this game, really.
If you put yourself in a position, to be able to set up teammates a little bit more as Flip, I would imagine, okay, shots start falling. And we've seen this, really, that now you've got to go look at those shooters. And it's an easier path to the rim, path to a bucket for Filipowski himself. When the outside shots aren't falling, that creates something totally different. I think about kind of the Arkansas game in particular, where Duke wasn't making those shots from the outside, and Filipowski kind of just went into bully ball mode and had good counting stats at the end of the day, but still wasn't efficient himself. So I definitely think when the shots aren't falling, trying to find an efficient Kyle Filipowski at that point has been difficult for this Duke team, because in these games, it's not like Filipowski himself is taking a lot of those outside shots, right? Like, his three-point attempts aren't at a crazy clip this season. A lot of his shots are kind of in that mid-range or really right close to the basket.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, he's being unselfish with the ball. I'm not trying to insinuate in any way that he is just trying to take over, because he's got 4 assists in this game. A couple of them I think were to Mark, where they come over and double team him and he just dumps it down to Mark. So, like, those are all good. I would just like to see him even more, like, focus on that. And, like, because, these bigs at the next level, gone are the days of you could just score the basketball and you're fine. You've got to be able to pass the ball. You've got to have good court vision, which I think Flip does. And I just like to see him go into almost like that playmaker role, that like Dirk at the top of the key. Like, I don't know. I think he's got all those kind of quirky things to his game that I think, Kevin Garnett-ish, that he really could be. And so I just hope he figures it out and has fun, man. That's at the end of the day. I like for him, when he struggles, man, I see it all over his face. And I just want that kid to be smiling and playing basketball.
It'll make us all happy if we see more smiles from Filipowski because, man, what a player he is for the Duke team. A road game again tonight against Pitt. Duke is back at it. They briefly go back to RDU, and then they're back there yesterday loading up and flying back up to take on Jeff Capel and Pitt. So what do you think about this matchup in particular? Because here we are once again on the road.
I mean, I think that Pitt plays a very physical brand of basketball. And I will – this is not in any way like trying to set up a blame game, but I will say I think it will depend on how the game is officiated at the beginning. How much are they going to let go, right? And then Duke's going to have to adjust. That's going to be my prediction. Is there's going to be griping and complaining on one side or the other, right, of the officiating for the first 10 minutes of the game, and then either Pittsburgh is going to have to adjust the way they play defense to stay with Duke, or Duke is going to have to adjust to the physicality and win an ugly game. That's my prediction. I don't know what the score is going to be. I know Pittsburgh. If Duke fans, and I hate to use this as an example, if you think back to the Tennessee game, last year's tournament, Tennessee literally, I mean, listen, it's long enough now. We're not griping about losing that game, but every time down the court, Duke was getting hacked, pushed, shoved, grabbed. And the officials didn't call it and wouldn't call it every play. If the officials are going to let that go, then Duke's going to have to adjust and become more physical. So now if they start calling it, then all of a sudden a team like Tennessee or Pittsburgh tonight will have to back off a little bit. So we'll see how that goes, but I would keep your eye on that and seeing if Duke can transition into being more physical or if Pitt's going to have to transition out of being so physical on their side.
We'll see what happens. I think also knocking down the shots will help on the road because shooting has been a concern. As you were talking, I just wanted to give guys a kind of, or our followers and listeners here, a picture of those splits, home games versus road games, particularly for Duke's top scorers. And here I am. I apologize, leaving Jeremy Roach out of the picture for this one. Man, we're guilty of that. But looking at Filipowski and Jared McCain in particular, home games this season, Jared McCain is shooting 54% from three-point range. Away, 3 of 19. That's 16% in three-point attempts. And then Kyle Filipowski is shooting 42% from three-point range at Cameron Indoor. He's shooting 13% from three. From the floor, Flip is shooting 56% at home and just 37% from the floor in road games. Kind of knew this is a story that you see year after year. Makes sense, but man, when you see some of those numbers, it hurts because we know the offense these guys are capable of.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is, man. I mean, is it about just maturing and understanding that, like, every road game that you're at, it's basically an NCAA tournament game. Like, you have that feeling, and you've got to match it. And I get that gets old, throughout the season. But we're not throughout the season yet. We're kind of still early on in the season. So you really like to see that. And then I'm sure there's, like, adjustments, that have to be made. But listen, Jared McCain's been playing basketball since he was a little kid. He's been playing in different arenas, small gyms, large arenas, lighting, maybe a little bit different in different places. Like, these guys have had to do that. So, like, they're going to have to adjust. And when it's all said and done, they've got to have their confidence on the road, just like they have it at home. And they've got to find as much joy, as JJ Redick would say, in shutting up your critics than you do having your fans cheer for you. And you got to get that killer instinct where I would rather have people yelling at me how much they hate me and me hit that three and shut them up than I would to be at home having everybody cheering for me when I hit a shot. So that's where you got to develop that, and you got to develop that kind of dog inside of you. And this Duke team desperately needs it if they think they're gonna go anywhere in March.
Pitt tonight, 10-5 Pitt, Duke 11-3. FanDuel has Duke favored by 5.5 points. Should be a fun contest. Josh, it's great to see you as always. We'll have to do this again sometime soon. Best of luck to our Duke basketball team tonight, and thanks for being here again today.
Yeah, if you're on the East Coast, everybody stay dry and go Duke.
Yeah, we'll talk to you again soon. That's our pal Josh Cox from the Duke Football Talk Section 17 podcast. And yeah, we got some pretty severe storms throughout the East Coast, so definitely be safe out there. Thank you so much for your support always here with Locked On Blue Devils. Once again, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, share it with your friends. Your support means so much to us here at Locked On Blue Devils. That'll do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.